Hello, everybody! Welcome to another episode of Reacting Reddit, where real humans read, react, and summarize trending topics online by using Reddit comments to talk about them. So today, we're going to be talking about the Proud Boys leader, Enrique Tarrio, which I hadn't really known anything about, but it's quite interesting. So I'm absolutely not endorsing the Proud Boys' behavior at all, because they're pretty close to terrorists. But that being said, it's interesting learning about their history. There's going to be a few things we're going to go over in this video, but I will have you know that at one point, a Proud Boys leader live streamed him putting a dildo in his asshole for two reasons. One, to say fuck the libs. And two, to prove that he doesn't hate gay people, which is quite a statement. I mean, really, I'm wondering what would happen if our major politicians wanted so badly to prove that they don't hate gay people that they stuck dildos in their butts, you know? Like, that's some next level dedication right there. But just so you know, this person, Enrique Tarrio, there's actually been multiple leaders of Proud Boys. And one of them was actually only leader for 2 days before this person, Enrique Tarrio, took over. What's also quite interesting is the Proud Boys have a reputation for being white supremacists, but the leader is totally Latino. Like, he runs other groups called, like, Latinos for the U.S. and stuff. So, like, it's not even like, oh, he's secretly Latino. He's straight up Latino and identifies as it. So it's interesting, right? Because these groups do things to attack black people. And we often think that, oh, they're just a bunch of white people. But that's actually not true. It's mostly white people and some other minorities hating on black people. You know, it's pretty crazy. But basically, what happened? So you might think that this person was involved on the attack on the 6th. But it turns out he actually got arrested right before that happened. He did something or was involved with a flag burning at a church like 2 days before January 6th. And then he went to Washington, D.C. with 2 magazines. Not magazines to read, magazines to load guns, right? Like, you know, assault rifles. A magazine's the big thing you clip into it so it can keep shooting its bullets, you know? It's got like hundreds of bullets. And Enrique is a convicted felon, so he's not allowed to possess firearms or magazines. In this case, he entered Washington, D.C., and apparently he had the magazines because he was selling them to somebody, which totally makes sense. Because it is very easy to sell weapons in the United States. Very, very easy. And they were also branded with the Proud Boys logo. So that probably is true. Granted, it's not a good place to sell that because that's illegal in DC. You know, especially for him to be having them. DC has more intense gun control laws than a lot of other places. So yeah, that was a thing, and he got arrested, right? And so there's speculation as to, oh, he got arrested so that he couldn't be held accountable for the stuff on the 6th. Like, some people think that he knew something was going to happen and he didn't want to get in trouble, so he did some dumb shit to get arrested so that he wouldn't get in trouble. But I don't know, guys. It's really hard to time your own arrest if you're not getting arrested immediately at the crime. And this didn't happen to him. He committed a crime and was involved with burning and trespassing on a church property and stuff. But then he didn't get caught straight away. He then went to D.C. and got arrested when he entered D.C. So I don't buy that argument of, oh, he was just like, he did that. He got arrested on purpose so that he wouldn't get in trouble. Like, it seems like he was just living his life, and his life is things that get him arrested, basically. But one last piece of context before we get into the discussion here. This guy was an FBI informant for like years, and not just a casual FBI informant. He did, in context, really, really well, according to the FBI. And also what's interesting is he's made statements denying that he was an informant, Meanwhile, all of these legal government officials are like, yeah, that guy's totally our informant, and he does really, 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 really well, and he helped us eliminate a whole bunch of crime syndicates in Florida. It's funny, too, because that kind of contradicts the Proud Boys image. Like, the fact that their leader is an undercover FBI. It really puts the nail in the coffin there, doesn't it? So let's let's move on and see what these comments have to say. And keep in mind, Reddit's pretty anti-Trump. So it's interesting because if you read Reddit comments, it makes you think that everyone hates Trump. But the reality is a little bit less than half of the United States likes Trump. So by definition, if you're just reading stuff and people are talking shit about Trump and nobody's fighting about Trump or no one's saying anything good about Trump, then you're not getting the whole U.S. picture, basically. Because you can hate people who support Trump, but, I mean, from my perspective, I dislike Democrats and Republicans who shit each other and hate each other equally. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. If you hate other U.S. people simply because of their political affiliation, you can fuck off. You're not being a good U.S. citizen. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. We need to include our other U.S. people. Listen to their opinions. Hear each other out, even if we think they're absolutely batshit and crazy. Because if you don't listen to the absolutely batshit and crazy people, then they become intense and they only talk around other absolutely batshit crazy people. And the next thing they know, they think the whole world is like that, and then they do some crazy shit and people die. So it's our responsibility as regular normal citizens who aren't crazy batshit and aren't going to go attack people. We need to listen to all the people who we think are crazy. We need to listen to each other, guys. The U.S. has a big problem of not listening. So please listen to other people. Try and understand instead of just talking shit and hating. Oh, I'm preaching to the choir. Moving on. This comment by XDM Key says, why did he have 2 high-capacity magazines? He can't legally own a firearm because he is a convicted felon. Yeah, he probably didn't realize that in DC he's not allowed to have magazines for a firearm either. Because honestly, why would you just have magazines but not firearms? Well, either you ditched the firearm or you weren't trying to use a gun, right? So there's kind of 2 explanations to this. One is that these people cosplay and dress up as soldiers all the time. They just will have a fake gun instead of a real gun so that they can be in DC, basically. Which is kind of sketchy because from a DC law enforcement perspective, you're not supposed to have a gun, so you should basically get arrested even if your gun is fake, just because you look like a fucking soldier, right? You could just be a soldier, you know? What are they supposed to do in that case? It's complicated. But so in this case, he was going to DC to sell his magazines. So that's why he had them with him, supposedly. Blow Even says, these dudes like to cosplay as special ops. They're generally dressed as a typical Call of Duty avatar with mole vest, pouches, etc. That's a cool look to intimidate normies and arouse other Proud Boys. That's actually a pretty good explanation there. Satan Fan says, bragging about arson is pretty stupid, especially if you're about to incite a riot. Stupidity is a common denominator running through these groups. Yeah. Bragging about arson is pretty intense. I don't know if he's going to incite a riot, though. He went to D.C. Maybe. He was probably going to participate. There's so much conjecture, really. He got arrested, and it turns out he was he's a mole, or he's an undercover agent. Person VA says, this was tactical. He definitely did this on purpose, maybe for the attention, but I think he did it so he has an excuse for why he will not be present at the probable riots in D.C. as the Proud Boy leader. He's probably afraid that this will end in literal shootouts with law enforcement, seeing him as the main agitator or coordinator. A lot of Nazis are really stupid, yeah, but their leadership usually isn't, and it's a mistake to presume them to be so. I don't agree with that comment. I definitely don't agree. He's like, yeah, it would be one thing if he did something and got arrested immediately after he did something, but he did something and then got arrested multiple days later when he was trying to enter Washington, D.C. to sell guns. Like, he could have just, if he really wanted to get arrested for something temporary and not be an issue, he would have done the crime and not had the guns. Because burning someone's protest, breaking onto their property and burning their flag, that is a much less serious crime than a felon possessing firearms. So I totally disagree. This person didn't. I highly doubt that they made the decision to get arrested. Because if they did, they would have made the decision to get arrested for something much, much more minor than a felon possessing firearms. That's a big thing. He could go to jail for like multiple years because of that. And I really doubt he's going to choose to go to jail for multiple years just so that he doesn't get blamed for something, so that he doesn't go to jail. That doesn't make sense. Like, that's not what happened here. This person was just doing what they do, living their life the way they have been living their life, which is causing a ruckus, burning Black Lives like protest flags and fighting with people. And he just kept doing that. Like, that behavior wasn't unique to right before the riots. Like, that's what he's been doing for a while. So, yeah. DePoopers says maybe he's trying to get thrown in jail before any riots happen, so he can't be held liable for anything that happens because of his terrorist organization. Or maybe I'm overthinking how smart these people are. Yeah, again, that's not what's happening here. These people aren't deciding to get arrested, because if they were, it would be for much smaller crimes. Why would you shoot yourself in the foot with a bazooka when you could shoot yourself in the foot with a BB gun? Like, really? Come on. Redbeard says he is a huge pussy and probably tripped the cops off himself so he wouldn't have to be in the streets on the 6th. Again, that's not true. Johnny Lawless says ideological flexibility to the point of formlessness is the hallmark of fascism. This is why fascism isn't really an ideology so much as it is a set of political behaviors. Maybe you could argue that about modern fascism, because fascism by and by isn't popular at all in the world anymore. But if you go to Italy in the brink of the world wars, there absolutely were political parties identifying as fascists, talking about fascism and spreading it as an ideology. So that's just not true. Fascism was actually a political ideology. Yeah, you may disagree with it, but that's what it is. So yeah, I mean, now it's changed, you know? So we don't live in a fascist government. So of course, like, we see these people who have behaviors and they're political. And that's true, but it's complicated. The US in general doesn't really understand. Most US citizens just casually use political terms like fascist, communist, socialist, and they just use them as an insult. They don't actually understand what the terms mean, and they don't view them as alternative forms of government. They view them all as inferior forms of government to democracy, right? And, you know, you could argue that maybe that's true, but the reality is even democracy doesn't actually we don't live in a democratic world. We live in a capitalist world. And capitalism is what causes change. Money is influence. When you want people to change the environment and be better, the only way to get them to do that is to make it profitable for them to be better and to be better for the environment. We don't live in a true democracy, because if we did, everything would be voted on. All the issues. If we wanted to continue the drug war, the citizens would vote on whether they want to continue that. We wouldn't elect politicians who decide things. We would, as a nation, democratically vote on every single issue, right? But that can't happen. That's theoretically not possible. So, it's only theoretically possible, but not actually possible in the real world. So that's why we have what our government is now, which is this. It's a democracy, but in some ways it's very undemocratic. Like, the reality is, if you have $1 million, you have more rights than a person with $100. That's not democratic. That's capitalist. And ultimately, No matter what form of government you're in, whether it's communist or socialist or democratic or mixtures, ultimately, that's not really what's going on. That's just what your government says it is. But really, everybody's capitalist. Everybody is controlled by money. Capitalism is the dominating force of government. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality. And at least today, we live in a time where individual normal people can become rich. It's not likely, but you can play your cards right, use the internet, buy a bunch of GameStop stock right now, apparently, and then you can get money. Whereas 100 years ago, it was basically impossible for a non-wealthy person to become wealthy. Whereas now, it's totally possible. You just have to really know what you're doing and educate yourself using the internet. Before that was impossible. So I personally, I'm all about that capitalism. I think that when someone comes in and, corporations are greedy in the beginning, yeah, that's totally true. But with time, eventually, people with money and good intentions do show up. They're just always very late to the party. Hot Ad 1902 says, at least Ammon Bundy was morally consistent with his anti-governmental beliefs in that he actually came out in support of defund the police. As for the rest of them, it was funny watching all these 3% show up in support of the government. Cactus Chan Awo says, from what I've heard, their line now is that cops are enforcing unconstitutional orders, calling them oath breakers, in reference to the cops' oath to protect and uphold the Constitution. Honestly, I'm surprised this wasn't their position from the start, but my guess is they were trying to align themselves with the establishment right to gain support. That hadn't worked, since the Republicans are mostly spineless and ineffective, so they're taking the hard line they probably wanted to take in the beginning. The bottom line here is that the populist right and the populist left have both pretty much lost faith in the institution of the police and the establishment in general. We could see some major upheavals in the near future if groups like the Proud Boys and Antifa realize they have more in common than they thought. Yeah, that's a worldwide thing, actually. Like, even as crazy as these people are, citizens, and not just in the US, in most countries in the world, citizens are increasingly frustrated with their governments. Citizens now, globally, on a worldwide scale, citizens are exponentially less loyal to their governments. They don't trust their governments. Whereas 60 years ago, most people trusted their governments while their government was forcing them to go to war and die. Which is really ironic, isn't it? Like, while there were drafts in place and countries were going to war to profit and just kill all of their people, but the rich got richer, it's a great system for the rich to earn more money and kill all their people. And yet humans were no more loyal to their governments back then? Like, it's pretty funny, isn't it? That now we live in a time where our governments are much, 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 much nicer to us. Like, really much nicer. The 1940s and 50s was a shitty time. A very shitty time. The governments had like secret apartments back then that could easily just kill you, and it didn't matter. They were doing just as much illegal stuff as Russia while talking shit about Russia, meanwhile having secret government departments that do the exact same things. Really dumb, really irritating. But the point is, nowadays, there's actually a problem in politics where young people in loads of countries around the world now in 2020 don't want to get involved with politics because they don't trust politicians. They don't view politicians as people who want to make the world better. They view politicians as greedy. I view politicians as greedy. Like, I understand that not all politicians are greedy. There's some people who inspire me and I learn from, but I view politics as it's not a way to directly make the world better. It's a way to get rich in the name of making the world better. But there's actual things you can do with technology and business and companies that directly make the world better. So why would I want to be involved in politics when that's just in the name of improving the country or the world or whatever? But really, it's just for money, right? These people are some of the richest, wealthiest people in the world, and the reality is their day-to-day life has absolutely nothing to do with the day-to-day regular life of most working U.S. people. So therefore, these politicians, by and by, almost all of them, whether they're Republican or Democrat, are completely disconnected from the normal U.S. working people. And that's how it is in most countries. Libidabadama, wow, what is this name? Lambda toll of this. Oh, I'm bad at all of this, wow. Says, I honestly think they have the mental and rational capacity of your average 5th grade student. I generally think they lack the capacity to understand their own emotions or views. Yeah, well, that's the problem right there. It's not that they understand the capacity, it's that our country is filled with people who don't try and understand others. We view people as violent, we think they're crazy, we talk a bunch of shit about them, and we let hatred into our hearts and we hate them. And I don't care who you hate, if it's a pedophile or Proud Boys or whatever, you should never hate anything. If you hate, you let hatred into your heart and it corrupts you. You have to try and understand the things that you hate. Because at the end of the day, if you hate anything, you're the one in sin. You're the one hating. You're the one committing crime as well. And hate makes you like the thing that you hate, whether you realize it or not. So if you feel intense anger at these people and these events, you can express that anger, or you can try and understand them and try and resolve your hatred. Because if you don't resolve your hatred, it's going to fuck your life up. And that's what it does. It fucks your day up. It makes you angry about stuff. You don't feel good when you get hateful. That doesn't bring meaning to your life. Your kid doesn't see you hate and talk shit about somebody and then think, oh, wow, that's awesome. I want to be a proud, awesome dad like him. You know? They think, oh, I'm going to be like this. It's normal to hate. But it's wrong. It's weak to hate. So if you hate, you're weak. Don't be weak. Be strong. Try and understand people. Stop fighting with people and try and understand why they feel the way they do. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to think it's right. But you got to try and understand, because you have a decision in this life. You can either hate the things you don't understand, or you can try and understand the things you don't understand. And don't be a weak-ass motherfucker who hates shit. Seriously, don't hate shit. If you're hating something right now, stop it. Go learn. Kagzel says, that awkward moment when you have to arrest your coworkers. So this is a joke because the Proud Boy guy was arrested, right? But a lot of these individuals are quite close with police, or are family members of police. So that's why you have a lot of situations where, like, people were frustrated that in the Capitol riot, you saw some police taking selfies with the people who were protesting, right? I will argue that was before the police knew or realized that people had stormed the Capitol and were inside. Like, you don't see that happening with a police member inside the Capitol, like, on their team. Like, of course not, right? So people have taken it out of context, really, because, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a police person just having a friendly moment with a protester. Like, that isn't inherently bad. Sometimes that can be a really beautiful thing. Like, at a Black Lives Matter protest, seeing some white police officers take off their protective gear and have tender moments with black people protesting against the police, that's fucking powerful. That is meaningful. That is a person who's trying to understand, not people who are hating, right? But that exact same situation could be flipped, right? So the police officer being tender to a protester is okay in some situations and great, but in other situations it's horrible, right? And yeah, the people are just full of hypocrisy. It's really irritating. The rest of Casgle's comment says, this is now my highest upvoted comment ever. Thanks for appreciating my joke, everyone. Let's hope this hate rally fizzles out and the officers all uphold the law rather than protecting these white supremacists from the consequences of their own actions. This aged like a fine goddamn wine. The terrorists who stormed the Capitol today and the police officers taking selfies with them instead of defending our own king nation. Yeah, typical, I guess, right? If No Surf says, these types protested anti-mask sentiment and wanting businesses to fully reopen to save the economy. Dumbasses decided to protest at a shopping mall where businesses are open and picking fights with shoppers, encouraging some shops to close. Yeah, they're being hypocritical. Come on. You can expect everybody to be hypocritical. You're going to understand humans more if you expect them to be hypocrites. When I hear someone say something, I hear them say they're going to do something. That doesn't mean shit to me. I don't actually think people do the things they say they're going to do unless they've shown me multiple times that they're a person who follows through with their word. Because most people just talk a bunch of shit all the time and don't do anything about anything. And the internet really enables that, because you can have someone sitting on their computer all day talking a bunch of shit online, making other people copy their opinions and crap, meeting them when nobody actually researched anything. You can get it to a point where 10,000 people are talking about something, and every single 10,000 of them didn't look up something for themselves at all, and they're all just regurgitating the same uninformed opinions to each other. Welcome to hypocrisy and the internet and the modern era. I hope you enjoy your time here. These people just want to have a presence, changing their focus, looking for things to be against. I would argue that I don't think they're actually as organized as these comments are saying they are. A lot of the time, it's just at the end of the day, all of these groups and a lot of us as citizens, we have something in common, and it's what I was getting to earlier. We have an increasing frustration and resentment towards government officials. Ultimately, all of this crap has something to do with that. It's not that they're strategizing and blah, blah, blah. They feel that government people aren't to be trusted. Then they react to that feeling by behaving the way they do. Whereas I feel that government people aren't to be trusted, and I react to that feeling by not trusting government people unless I feel like I have a good reason to. I don't go out and burn things and that kind of stuff, but I still have the inherent same feeling that is causing them to do that. And you listening to this as well, you probably have some kind of hesitation or restriction to yourself with your government. And you probably don't go out and burn things or shoot people because of it, but you still have that feeling. And by targeting these people and making them seem absolutely crazy, we distract ourselves from the reality that a lot of these people at their core actually have a similar frustration to what a lot of other Democrats and Republicans feel. And I'm not saying that you should go and try and relate to Proud Boys people, but you should be hesitant of any time anyone hates another group. Hatred is evil. You are weak if you hate. You are a weak baby cryboy. Don't be weak. Be a strong person. Don't hate. Understand. Be smarter. Use your brain. Jesus. Hacky Sack Jack says he admitted to lighting the Black Lives Matter banners afire. Plus, he had high-round magazines and is a convicted felon. The guy shouldn't be at any protests. Yeah, I mean, definitely. A protest isn't going to be more peaceful because this individual is there. Like, I highly doubt it, right? That being said, there actually are some people in these groups who were making things more peaceful. I'm not saying that happened all the time, but there are cases where individuals with weapons kept protesters in check when the protesters were getting out of line. Like, that has happened. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but that's the problem with like saying black and white statements about groups, entire groups of people, is that by definition, you're always going to be wrong about at least one of those groups. Like right now, there's probably one Proud Boy member who's like, fuck, why the fuck am I here? I shouldn't have done this. I'm regretting this. And they're a person you probably would like and really sympathize with, yet they're in Proud Boys, so you judge them and hate them, even though they're actually really torn and probably about to leave, right? Like, you got to be understanding about people, because people are struggling, and you can hate people, but it's just going to increase the struggle. Gambler919 says, you could be right, but having 2 high-capacity magazines in DC, there's a problem as well. Yeah, that's illegal. And also, he was selling them to somebody. Like, why would you go into DC to sell guns? You could, like, I bet it was like, he was like, oh, yo, you gonna be on that protest on the 6th? Oh, yeah, I can meet you there. I'm gonna be there too. I'll just bring my bullet things. Don't worry, I don't got no guns. It'll be fine. No one's gonna search us. Nah, we'd be good. I'll see you there. I'll bring you 2 Proud Boy magazine rifles. Yeah. See you there, bye. Like, come on. Zen Giles said, dude had extended mags and confessed to burning stuff at the black church repeatedly. Yeah, he very much confessed to that. As far as I'm concerned, cops did their job for once and arrested this bigoted piece of shit before he could shoot up a crowd or try and execute a mayor or governor. His Pikachu face must be so big. Concept 8 says they have one core belief. Trump is right. Then they modify everything else to fit that. Bill Barr says there may have been fraud. He's great. Barr says no fraud. Deep state. Police brutalize Antifa. Police great. Police brutalize Trump supporters. 1312. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. But it's because Trump, you have to understand what Trump represents to them. And a lot of these really intense people who support Trump, the reason they support Trump is because they care a lot about two main things. They care a lot about gun rights, and they care a lot about freedom of speech, even if that speech is hateful or hurtful to other groups. So they're right now very antagonized. That group of people is being super attacked, basically, because so not with the gun right thing so much, because there's not been any like big event to change gun law at the moment, but with the fact that they care about freedom of speech, and Trump was eliminated from all these social media platforms, Parler was taken down, all this stuff happened. It's very easy in their heads to be like, the world is over, it's ending, the government is too corrupt, it's taking over everything, we can't speak, they're holding us down, we gotta fight, we gotta kill. Like, the reality is that's terrifying that people think that way, but that is how a lot of them think. And if you just hate them and you don't try and get to know and understand what motivates them, then you're going to be in a worse off position, and it's your responsibility to understand why people are doing these things. Why do these crazy crimes happen? What circumstance leads individuals to committing these crimes? Because if you don't focus on understanding the circumstance, the same stuff is just going to happen over and over again, and you're always going to be confused why it keeps happening, because the circumstance that created it still exists, right? And that's ultimately what causes everything with human behavior. Do you put people in a certain place where they feel a certain way and they're around other people who feel that way, then stuff's going to happen. You have to change people's circumstance in order to change the results of people, right? Witch9 says, it doesn't hurt that they've pretty much announced they're ignoring DC gun laws on social media. It gives them cause to arrest. Like, yeah, that's definitely... I mean, from my perspective, if there's protests and crap, and given the U.S.'s history with mass violent crimes, I'm amazed that more attacks on these protests haven't happened. Like, we've got all of these times where people take assault rifles to schools and shoot people. What about that same mentality against protesters? That's gonna happen at some point, which sucks. That really sucks. At some point in the US, there's gonna be a protest, who knows what side, and somebody's gonna open up automatic rifle fire on the crowd. The great irony is, even though we hate the government so much, it's much, much, much more likely in the United States that a US citizen takes an assault rifle and fires on a crowd than a government police officer does that. And that's sad. And you have to ask yourself, like, is it worth having assault rifles like that? Because the problem with the gun culture is that we manufacture weapons and sell weapons. What do you think happens? What do you think happens when you sell 1 million assault rifles to a foreign nation in civil war? Like, what do you think they use those for? Do you think they just go to target practice and shoot targets? Like, we create violence. At least the NRA is bankrupt now, so that's good. Yeah, I know some of you are Republican and support that, but I don't care. I hate gun violence. I don't care if I'm alienating you right now. That's okay. You can hate me. Leohart88 says, maybe actually arrest and charge these white supremacist terrorists and there wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, it's not that simple. If they got half of what the police gave to Black Lives Matter, they wouldn't. Yeah, that's totally true. It's hypocritical. Like, these white supremacist protesters get treated better than Black Lives Matter protesters, and that's fucked. Like, these people raided the U.S. Capitol and literally invaded the Senate. or the House or whatever it was. And guess what happened? Only one person got shot. You realize that in a Black Lives Matter protest in a designated protesting area, without an attack on the Capitol, one person will get shot? If this was a Black Lives Matter thing, way more people would have been shot. Way more. But again, there's also this whole maybe even not conspiracy theory of people in politics actually knowing that something was going to happen and putting something together to make that happen. There's increasing investigation into the actual politicians themselves, even people who were present during the attack, which is pretty interesting. Five Along Dog Party says, this group just made me scratch my head. They're named after a Disney song about not letting their moms down. And they're violently anti-anything but white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Yet they have an Afro-Cuban leader who identifies as Latino. They worship the ground walked on by a one-term impeached president. They have memed their way into the form of a demigod, all while calling themselves patriots. It's truly the strangest timeline. That's a poetic comment. I totally agree. Totally. Beautiful. Mr. Mo Horizon says, you forgot the part where the leader shoved a dildo up his ass live on webcam to stick it to the libs. I'm not making that up. Edit. Hey, several valid reasons to stick a dildo up your ass. Vengeful hatred is not on that list. Well, mister, you should learn your dildo Proud Boy history, because that actually... So that was back when the Proud Boy leader had like more of a talk show, and it was less kind of extreme as it is now. I'm going out on a limb here saying that, but it seemed a bit more palatable back then. And it wasn't the current leader, nor was it the previous leader. It was actually the leader prior to that, okay, who did put a dildo up his ass on a live stream to say stick it to the libs. But it actually wasn't just to say fuck the liberals. It was to say fuck the liberals and make a commentary because people were saying that individual hated gay people. And he was like, nah, fuck that. I don't hate gay people. I stick a dildo up my ass on a live stream. You think I hate gay people now? So I would argue that he, in that individual case, he wasn't actually using the dildo out of vengeful hatred. It was more to just be ridiculous and make a point. I don't know if he made his point, but I really want a lot of politicians to try and make his point too. That would make my fucking day. Like really, if Biden on a live stream could put a dildo in his ass to say, I appreciate gay people. I too feel pleasure when my asshole is touched in the right way. I am a human just like you. Oh God, that would be so funny. That's never gonna happen though. Anyway, yeah, maybe one day we'll live in a world where all our politicians also have porn hubs and what's that other website where you make your own porn and stuff? Fuck, what's it called? My Time? MySpace? Do you have there's some website. Damn it. Private Me? I don't remember what it's called. It's famous, super famous. But basically, you put your own porn of you on your website, and then people pay you for it. So imagine that politicians in the future, it's so normal at this point that they all have their porn hubs and stuff, and you can watch the politicians fuck. And you go for the ones you think are attractive and you kind of like their political beliefs. Like, that very well could be a society we live in someday in like 1,000 years. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe and comment below. Let me know what kind of stuff you want me to make videos about. There's a whole world of videos to make, and we make one video a day, so we got plenty of content to pursue. So comment below. Let me know. Otherwise, if you want to make this kind of content, please reach out to us. We are looking for content creators on YouTube who are interested in making YouTube videos using software and making their thumbnails using different software. If you want to check that out, please reach out to us. Get our email from our About page on this YouTube channel. Say hello, and we will set up a Zoom call with you. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ciao.